One of the things that uh, was not mentioned in the introduction, but which is keeps occurring to me as I listen to these fascinating presentations tonight, is that uh, I also teach, um, and that's primarily how I pay the bills. I teach at New Century College. It's the Integrative Studies program at George Mason University, and it's a really interdisciplinary faculty that I'm a part of, and I think that's why I'm getting so much pleasure from listening to the kind of work that people are doing here, both the presenters and the folks that spoke before. I feel like I'm with my tribe here. Um, as JD said, I'm a fiction writer. I think of my work as exploring the ways that people and places shape each other. I originally got into this topic because I wanted to write fiction about the process of suburban sprawl, which was a process that I witnessed at close range throughout my childhood. I grew up in a town called Fair Oaks. It's east of Sacramento. When my family moved there when I was about 5, Fair Oaks was a little sort of self-contained agricultural town between Sacramento and the Sierra foothills. By the time I left for college at 18, it had been completely subsumed by the sprawl. And so I kind of think of that sprawl as perhaps the most formative experience of my growing up. And it left a deep impression on me, and not very positive one. So that when I got interested in writing fiction, I definitely wanted to try to deal with this. I found that my stories kept coming back to this process of sprawl. And I found that it was really hard to get into that material in a way that would overcome the sort of mundane quality of suburban sprawl, because although it's a pretty dramatic thing when it happens to a landscape and when it happens to communities, it has impacts that affect people and other organisms and the non-living environment. It's so ubiquitous and such a common thing now that we're sort of numb to it. I wanted to figure out a way to sort of to go at it in a fashion that might be surprising or different or dramatic. I was struggling with that. One night I was on the phone with my dad, who still lives out in California, and he mentioned to me, this is back in the 90s, he mentioned to me that not long before, a woman who was jogging on a bike path out in one of the outlying suburbs was attacked and killed by a mountain lion. And this is something that has happened with increasing frequency over the last couple decades. As I sort of mulled that over in the ensuing days, that I understood that you could really understand that attack in the context of suburban sprawl as people move into mountain lion habitat. Obviously, you're going to have more of those kinds of encounters, which is happening. Sometimes they're deadly for the mountain lion or for the people, and when that happens, it's obviously deadly often for the mountain lion too. More importantly for me, I've realized that was my way in, my dramatic way into this material. And I figured out that this novel that I ended up writing, Hear Him Roar, would begin with a mountain lion attack on a jogger. And it would use this event as the watershed moment and the controlling metaphor for a story that would consider some of the ecological and social and spiritual costs of the development that over the past several decades has denatured the region where I was raised. After I had pretty much finished that book, I started teaching in New Century by a series of sort of accidents and found myself in a really rich and interesting teaching and learning environment where I had a lot of opportunities to team teach. And a lot of the folks that I was teaching with were conservation biologists and experts on environmental policy who were thinking in a much more disciplined way and much deeper way than I had about the issues that I was exploring in my novel, which I felt like I just kind of stumbled upon. And I have found in teaching, doing this team teaching, that one of the things I like best about it is that it's great training for a fiction writer, because we fiction writers, what we have to do is we have to imagine ourselves into the shoes of all kinds of other people who aren't us, and walk in those shoes long enough to be able to write about it convincingly. And when you're teaching with people whose disciplinary backgrounds and personalities are very different from your own, you have a great opportunity to do that. And so I feel like I was able to kind of adopt this ecological perspective, this ecological way of thinking from some of the colleagues that I taught with, and that it has really percolated into my writing in ways that sometimes sort of surprise me.